Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jewell and Brendan Traxler.
Okay, so let's dive into this. It's kind of amazing to think about, isn't it? Our really, really distant ancestors.
The tetrapods.
Exactly, the tetrapods making that huge leap out of the water, 370 million years ago?
A massive moment in, history.
Right.
Life's history.
And now here we are, after exploring, pretty much all the land, even going to space. There's this real interest in going back to the ocean.
It's almost cyclical, that pull. Maybe it's always been there. But now we have the tech, or we think we do, and a very specific goal.
Absolutely, because what we're digging into today is, it's pretty wild, the idea of humans actually living underwater permanently.
Right.
And the spark for this conversation, what you brought to my attention, is this UK startup, Deep.
Yes, Deep. Their plans are, they're not messing around.
Not at all. Their timeline is
Wow.
aiming for a permanent underwater base by 2027. That's soon.
It's incredibly soon. And looking at the materials you shared, the sources, it's clear this isn't just like a pipe dream on paper. They've got actual plans, technology laid out.
Yeah, concrete steps. So our mission today, I guess, is to figure out, okay, how real is this? Can it actually be done? And what does it all mean?
Exactly. What are the implications, the challenges, the whole picture?
Okay, so the stuff you sent over, it covers Deep's plans, their tech, but also some history. Right. We've tried this before, sort of.
We have, yeah. And the sources touch on those earlier attempts and also the very real human challenges. It's not easy down there.
Definitely not. And leading this push is Deep's president, Sean Wolpert. He made a comparison that really jumped out at me.
The SpaceX one.
Yeah, calling Deep the SpaceX of the deep sea, trying to capture that same buzz, pulling brilliant minds, but for the ocean.
It's a smart analogy, I think. Very strategic. It frames it as pioneering, boundary pushing, attracts attention, maybe investment too.
Taps into that, explorer spirit.
Exactly, that drive to see what's next.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts of Deep's vision. What's the actual plan? How do they see this unfolding?
Okay, so it's phased, sensibly. They're not trying to build an underwater city overnight.
Right.
The first big milestone is what they call Vanguard. They're shooting for late 2025 for that.
Vanguard. Okay, so this isn't the final permanent home.
No, not initially. Think of Vanguard as more of a forward base, a test platform.
Gotcha. What's it like? What's it for?
It's described as relatively small, transportable actually, about 300 square feet.
Okay.
And its job is really for shorter missions, things like training divers, doing seabed surveys, maybe recovery ops.
Practical stuff.
Right. And crucially, it's designed for 3 divers down to about 325 feet, so still in the sunlight zone.
Ah, okay. Starting where there's still light, makes sense. Build up the experience, test the tech.
Precisely. Get the fundamentals right before going deeper and longer.
So what's next after Vanguard? What's the step towards that more permanent living situation you saw?
That's where the Sentinel units come in. These are a big jump up.
Sentinel. Okay, how big a jump?
Well, they're designed for 6 people. And it's not just bunks, The plans show actual bedrooms, 6 of them, plus a kitchen, communal area, a lab.
The proper lab, wow.
Yeah, dedicated science lab, and importantly, toilet facilities, which, is essential for longer stays.
Definitely. How long are we talking for Sentinel missions?
Up to 28 days. That's the target. And they're aiming for depths up to 656 feet.
Whoa, okay. That's much deeper. Almost double Vanguard's depth.
Right. Pushing towards the edge of the twilight zone where sunlight really starts fading.
Nearly a month underwater, 6 people, with a lab. That's starting to sound like a real base. But the pressure. How do they build something to handle that depth?
Yeah, the pressure is obviously a massive engineering challenge. Their solution is pretty interesting. Wire arc additive manufacturing, which is
basically...
It's essentially 3D printing, but with metal wire. Layer by layer, building up these incredibly strong structures designed specifically to withstand that immense external pressure.
So they're literally 3D printing the houses. Underwater houses.
Effectively, yes. It gives them strength, allows for complex shapes, and might even be better against corrosion long-term compared to, say, welding plates together. It's a very modern approach.
That's fascinating, using cutting-edge manufacturing for this extreme environment. Fits that innovative SpaceX-like image they're going for.
It does, but as we mentioned, people have tried living underwater before. The sources you found brought up some of that history.
Right, this isn't happening in a vacuum. There were earlier projects.
Oh, yeah. Back in the 50s and 60s, you had projects like Sea Lab, run by the U.S. Navy,
I've heard of Sea Lab.
and Jacques Cousteau's Con-Shelf habitats in France. These were really pioneering efforts, people living and working underwater for days, weeks.
How long did they manage back then?
Well, interestingly, the longest Sea Lab mission was about 28 days.
Huh. Same as Deep's target for the Sentinel unit.
Exactly. So Deep is definitely building on that legacy, aiming for that same duration initially, but obviously with much more advanced tech and a longer-term vision.
Standing on the shoulders of giants, as they say. But giants from the 60s.
Pretty much. And then, much more recently, you had that guy, Joseph Dituri, Dr. Deep Sea.
Oh, right. He stayed underwater for ages last year, didn't he?
He did. Broke the world record, 100 days.
100 days. Where was that?
At Jules Undersea Lodge in Florida. Now, it's important to note that was much shallower than what Deep is planning for Sentinel.
Okay.
But still, living under pressure for over 3 months, it gave us some really valuable modern data on how the human body reacts.
And how did it react? What were the key things you noticed from the reports on his stay? Must have had some effects.
Oh, definitely. Some were actually kind of positive, or at least surprising. He reported getting more REM sleep, the deep restorative kind.
Really? Huh.
And his cholesterol levels apparently went down.
Okay, interesting. Downsides.
Well, yes. He experienced temporary but pretty significant nearsightedness. His vision changed.
While he was down there.
Yeah. And maybe the weirdest one. He apparently shrunk slightly, lost a bit of height temporarily.
Shrunk? Seriously? How does that even happen?
The pressure, presumably.
Yeah.
Compressing the spine slightly. The reports weren't super detailed on the mechanism, but it highlights how weirdly our bodies can react.
Wow.
Okay.
It really drives home that, yeah, we might have come from the water way back when, but we are definitely land creatures now. Our bodies aren't just built for that anymore.
Not without significant support and adaptation, no. Which brings us squarely to the challenges. The big hurdles, Deep, and anyone else needs to clear for long-term stays.
Right. What are the main ones the sources focused on?
Probably the biggest, most well-known one is inert gas saturation, nitrogen, mostly.
Okay, explain that a bit.
Well, when you're under pressure breathing air, your body tissues absorb more of the inert gases, like nitrogen, than they do at the surface. If you stay down there at a constant pressure, your body gets saturated, which is fine, until you want to come back up. Decompression. If you reduce the pressure too quickly, those dissolved gases come out of solution, forming bubbles in your blood and tissues.
Ah, the bends.
Like
Decompression sickness.
Exactly, the bends, which can be incredibly painful, cause serious injury, or even kill you.
So living down there might be manageable, but getting back safely after a long stay is the really tricky part.
It's a huge constraint, requires very slow, controlled decompression, which can take days or even weeks depending on the depth and duration of the stay.
Okay, what else?
Another thing is just the air itself. Down deep, the air you breathe is much denser.
Right, because it's compressed.
Exactly. And while we can breathe denser air, the long-term effects, especially on your circulatory system, well, we don't fully understand them. Is it healthy to do that for months or years? We just don't know for sure.
Unknown long-term health effects.
Yeah.
Not ideal.
Not ideal, no. And then there's something Dituri talked about quite a bit, something really fundamental.
What's that?
Sunlight, or the lack of it.
Ah, yeah. Even Vanguard is just within the sunlight zone. Sentinel is pushing the edge. Anything deeper or more permanent?
You're in the dark. Or relying entirely on artificial light. Our bodies are just fundamentally wired for sunlight. Vitamin D production, our sleep cycles, our circadian rhythms.
All tied to the sun.
Deeply. Dituri apparently really missed it, even asked people to send him pictures of the sun. It sounds small, but psychologically and physiologically, it's massive. Replicating the benefits of sunlight artificially is hard.
Yeah, you can have bright lights, but it's not the same, is it?
Probably not. So you've got these huge biological and technical hurdles. pressure, decompression, air density, lack of sunlight.
And then there's the impact on the place itself, right? The ocean environment. Your sources mentioned ecological concerns.
Yes, and that's a really critical point, especially now. Our oceans are already under enormous stress. Climate change, warming waters, pollution, fishing.
So dropping big metal habitats down there.
Exactly. Even with the best intentions, like studying marine life, building these things involves physical disruption. You're altering the seabed, potentially impacting habitats and the creatures living there.
Noise pollution too, maybe, from construction or just operating the base.
Absolutely. Noise, waste management, potential leaks. It all needs very careful consideration. You don't want the act of studying the ocean to end up harming it further.
It's a real balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do you explore and learn without causing damage?
It's a huge ethical question. Deep says their goal is to study, 90% of sea life in the sunlight zone, which sounds great, but you have to weigh the benefits against the potential footprint.
Needs careful planning and probably strict regulations.
Definitely. Thorough environmental assessments, mitigation strategies. It has to be part of the plan from day one.
Okay, so despite all these challenges, physiological, technical, ecological, deep and thinking small long-term, are they? What did the materials say about their ambitions beyond Vanguard and Sentinel?
No, they're definitely thinking big picture. The roadmap includes aiming for 10 multi-span developments around the world by 2035.
10 multi-span. So interconnected habitats, like underwater villages.
That seems to be the implication. Larger, more complex, presumably more permanent settlements.
Wow. And then there was that other goal.
Yeah.
The really long-term, almost symbolic one.
Ah, yes. The first human birth underwater by 2050.
Yeah, that's quite a statement. It's not just visiting or working anymore. That implies truly living there. Generational, almost.
It's a profound idea, isn't it? It suggests a complete shift in our relationship with the ocean. A return, maybe, in a very, very different technological context to our origins. It's a massive milestone to even contemplate.
Scientifically, philosophically, huge. So what's driving them? Why take on all this risk and complexity? What's the core why, according to Wolpert?
Well, according to him, the main driver is the absolute necessity to understand our oceans better, to preserve them. He argues that basically, we can't afford to ignore the ocean's health anymore. It's too vital for the planet's climate, for life itself.
So the habitats are tools for that understanding.
Yeah.
Research platforms.
That seems to be the primary justification. Platforms for science, for monitoring, for developing technologies maybe needed for conservation or resource management. He also mentioned they're already talking to international partners who see the strategic importance of the oceans.
Right. So it's framed not just as exploration for exploration's sake, but as something vital for our future, tied to planetary health.
That's definitely the message they're putting out, using these underwater bases as critical infrastructure for science and ultimately for helping to manage the planet better. It's a powerful argument for such a difficult undertaking.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've gone pretty deep, appropriately enough, into Deep's plans.
Yeah.
Looked at our, ancient water connection, their step-by-step plan with Vanguard, then Sentinel.
The historical context, Sea Lab, Deturi's 100 days.
Right, and then wrestled with the big challenges. Pressure. Breathing dense air, the bends, no sunlight.
And the crucial need to not mess up the very environment they want to study, the ecological side.
Exactly. And finally, their big ambitions, multiple settlements, and that really evocative idea of the first underwater birth by 2050.
Yeah, looking at it all, it's this mix, isn't it? Human ambition, incredible technology moving fast, and this growing realization that, wow, the oceans are critical.
Definitely.
The challenges are real, they're massive, no doubt about it. But the potential payoff, new discoveries, maybe a whole new way of looking at our planet, it's undeniably huge. And yeah, that 2050 goal, that birth, if that ever happened, it would absolutely mark a turning point in how we see ourselves in relation to the sea.
So maybe the final thought for everyone listening is this. If we do manage this, if humans start having a permanent presence down there, what does that actually change? What new understanding of our world, our place in it, might come from living in the ocean, not just on the land looking at it?
What new perspectives emerge when your horizon isn't land or sky, but the deep?
Yeah, something really profound to think about.